Resting heart rate variability. First quarter of 2023 update. Are these data better than in 2022? More specifically, is the resting heart rate further reduced? And is heart rate variability increased? Now, for perspective, let's see how resting heart rate and heart rate variability change during aging before addressing these questions. So let's start off with age-related changes for the resting heart rate. So on the y-axis, we've got the resting heart rate plotted against age, and this is Whoop's data, as that's what I wear. I'm not affiliated, and I'm not here to sponsor them. So we can see that using Whoop's data, resting heart rate increases for both men and women up to 50 years of age. What about older than 50 years? So for that, we've got to go to Fitbit data, and this is a study of about 90,000 people. Once again, on the y-axis, we've got the average resting heart rate plotted against age, but in this case, the age range goes from 20 to 85 years. And in agreement with Whoop's data, we can see that the resting heart rate increases for both men and women up to about 50 years, and then declines thereafter up until 85 years. So with that in mind, relatively low resting heart rates are found in both young and people of advanced age. So how would we know if a relatively low resting heart rate was indicative of youth or aging? That's where heart rate variability comes in, as that provides more context. So what is heart rate variability? So in terms of the definition, it's the variability for the time in between heartbeats, which still may not be intuitive. But for a heart rate of 60 beats per minute, the assumption is that the heart beats exactly once per second. And that's not exactly true. So here we can see the time in between 3 consecutive heartbeats. And the time in between each of these heartbeats is not exactly the same, and the variability in that data is then calculated as heart rate variability, or more specifically in this case, as the RMSSD, or the root mean squared of successive differences. So with that in mind, let's take a look at how heart rate variability changes during age. And that's what we can see here. On the y-axis, we've got the RMSSD as the metric of heart rate variability plotted against age, and in this case, the age range goes from 20 to 60 years. Now note that there are 2 line graphs on this chart, solids and dashed. The solids are HRV at 6 in the morning, and the dashes are heart rate variability at 6 at night. So for every age group, note that heart rate variability in the morning is always higher, at least median values, when compared with nighttime. Either way, we can see that heart rate variability declines during aging, with values approaching 80 in youth and 20-year-olds, median values, to values about half that in 60-year-olds. And if we extrapolated the curve further, and I covered this in earlier videos, if we go beyond 60 years, heart rate variability would continue to decrease. So now that we know how heart rate variability changes during aging, we can address that question: is a relatively low resting heart rate indicative of youth or aging? So in younger ages, we can see that there is a low resting heart rate, but a high heart rate variability. In contrast, at older ages, we can see that there are low resting heart rates, but also low heart rate variability. Now, we can go back to our question, our initial question of, is first quarter 2023 data for heart rate variability and resting heart rate improved versus 2022? So first, we're going to take a look at the average yearly resting heart rate, and I first started tracking on August 5th of 2018, and this is through the first 3 months of 2023, March 31st of 2023, and I now have very close to 1,700 days of data over that time span. And that's what we can see here. Now, I won't go through year-by-year changes from 2018 to 2022. I covered that in earlier videos, and if you missed that, I'll put at least one of them in the right corner. What we want to know is the first quarter of 2023 better than 2022 data? And thus far in 2023, my average resting heart rate is 44.4 beats per minute. And we're using a 2-sample t-test to compare 2023 versus 2022. That data is significantly reduced. So I've further reduced resting heart rate again in 2023 when compared with 2022. Now also note that the resting heart rate in 2023 is lower, significantly lower than where I started in 2018, 50.9 beats per minute. So reducing one's resting heart rate is indeed possible. Now, is a relatively low resting heart rate indicative of youth or aging though? So to refresh your memory, remember, a relatively low resting heart rate can be found in youth, but also in advanced age. So am I just experiencing the age-related decline for resting heart rate? So for more context, let's have a look at heart rate variability. And this data is over that same time span, almost 1,700 days of data. And again, I won't go through the 2018 to 2022 heart rate variability changes, as I covered that in earlier videos. Thus far in 2023, the average heart rate variability is 62.1 milliseconds, which when using a 2-sample t-test when compared with 2022 is significantly higher. So I've significantly increased my heart rate variability thus far in 2023 when compared with 2022. Also note that 2023 data is significantly higher when compared with where I started in 2018, from 47 up to 62. So increasing one's heart rate variability is also possible. It doesn't have to be an age-related decline, at least not yet. So now we can address the question of, is a relatively low resting heart rate indicative of youth or aging? In my case, a relatively higher heart rate variability plus lower resting heart rate with average values of 62 and about 44 or 44.4 to be exact would be relatively youthful. And I say that because a lower heart rate variability plus a higher resting heart rate, 35 heart rate variability, 57 for resting heart rate, is expected based on my chronological age, at least based on the graphs that I presented in this video. Now, what's contributing to improvements for resting heart rate and heart rate variability in 2023? And I covered some of this in my last video, including balancing activity versus rest, making sure I'm not overtrained, but also body weight reduction, and more specifically, getting leaner in terms of body fat. So I won't go into that in this video. I'll cover that in a future video, as I'll dedicate it just to those two topics so we can really take a deep dive. All right, that's all for now. If you're interested in more about my attempts to biohack aging, check us out on Patreon. And before you go, we've got a whole bunch of discount links and merch that you may be interested in, including discount links for NAD quantification, green tea, epigenetic testing, oral microbiome composition, at-home blood testing, diet tracking, or if you'd like to support the channel, you can do that with the website Buy Me a Coffee, and all these links will be in the video's description, in addition to a link for Conquer Aging or Die Trying merch. Thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Have a great day.